And when it comes, Larry, right now to the conflict in Ukraine, how do you see the situation in Kursk region? There are a lot of tensions attacking and just the response coming from Russians.
Yeah, it's meaningless in terms of the outcome. I mean, seriously, yes, this has given a big shot in the arm to all of the delusional supporters of Ukraine that occupy were the Institute for the Study of War, or members of Congress, or think tanks. Oh, Ukraine's invading Russia. They're striking a major blow. They're getting their asses kicked. They are getting slaughtered by the hundreds. And it's probably well into the thousands, over 1,000 now. Ukraine, it'd be one thing if Ukraine had, 400,000 or 500,000 trained soldiers in reserve that they could then pour into the battle at any point, and they had an unlimited supply of tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, and a couple of squadrons of F-16 aircraft flying above them. But they don't have that. What they've done is quote, an embarrassment for Russia. There's a show out that it's called the World War II Diary. And what it does is it takes every single day in World War II, starting with September 1st, 1939, and lists everything that happened on September 1st, 1939 from a military standpoint. And then the same for September 2nd and September 3rd. And they do that all the way up to and through the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay in September of 1945. So when you go through and look at the war in those kinds of bite-sized chunks, some days they're up and some days they're down, and some days, oh, great victory today by Germany. How did it end? How did it end? Germany lost. How did it end with the Japanese? The Japanese lost. Ukraine has lost. They just haven't stopped fighting. But their ability to fight is diminishing with each passing day and with each of these losses. Because while it's been told, they're within 25 kilometers of the nuclear power plant. Yeah, that's still a good distance. They might be able to fire some artillery shells there. But as soon as they set up artillery pieces, Russian drones and IS and other intelligence surveillance reconnaissance aircraft are going to identify and destroy it. So what are they achieving? Let's say, for the sake of argument, oh my God, they have broken through. They've gotten all the way to Kursk. Now, somehow they've taken over Kursk without having to enter into a protracted battle of house-to-house fighting. Then what? Okay, they got Kursk. What next? Do they have enough manpower to press on to Moscow? This is not the German Wehrmacht. They can barely, some of their brigades, a brigade is normally around 2,000 soldiers. Some of the brigades are down as low as 500. They call them brigades. They're, barely a battalion. So the reality is Ukraine does not have the manpower, the trained manpower, and the logistics capability to sustain military push. So let's call Kursk their great last gasp, because they've expended some of their best forces reportedly on this. It's a futile mission. You got to step back and say, what's my goal? Let's say I've got a big 6'4" mixed martial artist standing out of my driveway, and I say, okay, I'm going to go out there and punch him. what's my plan after that? Because if I punch him, he's likely to try to punch me or do worse. So what's the plan? Am I trying to provoke him into a fight so he'll chase me and run into an ambush? Okay, that could be a plan, but that's not the Ukrainian plan here. Their plan seemed to be, we want to embarrass Russia. We want to hold on to a small piece of Russian territory so that they'll be forced to negotiate with us. Russia's not going to negotiate with Ukraine. Those days are over. The offer was put on the table. Offer was real clear. Stop the fighting. Pull your troops out of the four republics that are now part of the Russian Federation, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Pull your troops out. Then we'll talk. Ukraine said, no, hell no, we're not doing that. Okay, good. Russia said, fine. Next offer is not going to be as good. Next offer will be, okay, pull your forces out of Odessa and make sure all of your troops are back across the Dnieper and demobilize your army, or else we'll destroy it. I mean, it's just going to come to that. So, the Ukrainians may try to repeat what the Germans did in the last Battle of Berlin. Go up at their own version of Götterdämmerung, from the Wagnerian opera.
And even worse than that, it may be that it's going to be their strategy. I don't know if we can call it a strategy, just killing civilians and not getting anything on the battlefield.
Yeah, and all they've got to, killing civilians, all they're going to do is further enrage the Russians. It's going to make Russia more committed to finishing them off. Not a good situation to be in if you're the Ukrainians.
Yeah, what's unbelievable how NATO is supporting them in killing these civilians, and without having any sort of strategy, any sort of gain on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, can't name a single war that NATO's ever won and fought. Let's understand. It's a jobs program for white people. They just they got these generals and armies that don't do anything, so they got to get them a job. Hey, you can go command a NATO unit. Okay, job created. It's this is a form of welfare.
Larry, the other thing was so amazing. The German publication Bild was bragging about German tanks on the Russian soil. It's unbelievable. What's in it for Germany? And why they're so excited about that?
Oh my God. Kursk, as you may or may not recall, was the name of the battle from World War II, the Battle of Kursk. And I think the actual German offensive was called Operation Citadel, and it started with two German armies that were both north and south of Kursk that tried to come in a pincher to cut off the big blob of the Russian army, the Soviet army then, that was extending out towards the Dnieper River. And the goal was to cut off the army and destroy it. Well, the Soviets had gotten wind of the German plans, and the Russian Zhukov, the Soviet general, put in place a battle plan that had extensive layers of defensive lines, firing positions with tanks, and with artillery pieces. So this was all being constructed in order to destroy the Germans. And you got some revisionist historians that claim, the Germans would have won that except Hitler redeployed some of the Panzer units to Italy because the attack in Italy was underway. I think that's nonsense. It was the largest tank battle, I think, in history, and I think it still holds that record. And the Russians lost more tanks, but their tanks were smaller, easier to build, more quick. They could build them a lot quicker than the Germans. It was a significant defeat. So, the idea of blowing up German tanks in and around Kursk, it awakens within the Russian people memories of 1944. July 1944 was when that battle took place, if I recall correctly.
Larry, it seems that Ukrainians are talking about that they're saying that F-16s are no longer sufficient, and they're asking for F-A-18s. And what's going on in the mind of Zelensky and his army?
Remember that the song "Riding That Train, High on Cocaine"? Jerry Garcia, that's Zelensky. He's riding that train high on cocaine. Got a crash coming around the corner. It's ridiculous. F-18s, hell, why not F-35s? Give the Russians something else to shoot down. It's more target practice for the Russians. It really does benefit the Russians in terms of the militarily being able to go up against Western weapons systems in actual combat, but they're not really it's not the kind of situation they faced, say, if there was a full-blown NATO invasion. I mean, candidly, Ukraine was probably a better trained army for that invasion than anything that NATO has to offer. Can't tell NATO that because, they keep looking in the mirror and they're the fairest of them all. Oh man, are we good or what?
Because fighting with Russian right now, they need a combination of many things together with manpower, air defense system, I don't know, different types of weapons, but they don't have the main issue right now in Ukraine is the manpower. They don't have it. And it doesn't matter how much intelligence they're receiving, how much weapons they're receiving. At the end of the day, it doesn't make any sort of change on the battlefield.
Right. Yeah. No, that's absolutely the case. They are, and it's not just what they can't put on the field right now. It is the trend for the country. It's actual physical survival. Because if the majority of your population ends up being over the age of 40, well, they ain't having babies. The reproduction generally takes place between the ages of 15 and 35. You got about a 20-year period there, and that means each family may have to have 3 or 4 children to boost the population in Ukraine. Well, Ukraine's going the opposite direction. They were over 2.5 years ago, over 40 million people. They're estimating at least 20 million are no longer there in the country. They're down to 20, 21 million. And then you add on to that the military casualties. And then you add on to that the economic hardship and people not getting married and not having children. It means that, Ukraine is going to die as a country. I mean, Western countries face some of the same dilemmas. Even the Chinese, with all of their population, have fallen reportedly below replacement values. Japan is in real trouble. The United States, not so much now because of all the illegal immigration. All the illegal immigrants are having children. But, it's without the manpower. And then it's one thing if you got a living, breathing body that you can put a uniform on. The training, you're talking at a minimum to just get what they call it basic training for a reason. It's very, very basic. Learning how to carry out your own personal hygiene so you don't get sick and infect your other soldiers. Learning how to handle a firearm initially. Usually it's a rifle that you get initial training on. Pistol's a whole different matter. Pistol's a far more complicated training process than a rifle. Then how to march in formation, how to understand commands, how to communicate within the military, how to move as a unit in combat. That's where, how to navigate territory. You think, oh, well, they just got there with our iPhone and we'll look up our navigation app. Well, that gives off an electronic signal that can give away your position and make you a target. So
it seems that the Ukrainian army is asking, the Ukrainian officials are asking the United States to allow them to use long-range ATACMS against Russia. But they were attacking Russia using ATACMS.
Yeah.
How they're asking for permission right now?
Well, even if to go after targets that are, another 100 miles inside Russia, maybe, still doesn't get you to Moscow. And the ATACMS, they don't have that long of they got a limited range, as does the Storm Shadow. So it's just Russia has put the West on notice, and the West is going to pay a price for all of those missiles. It'd be one thing if they were attacking military targets, but they're not. They're attacking civilian targets. The Ukrainians are cowards.
Yeah. Larry, when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East, it seems that, in your opinion right now, do you think that Iran can attack Israel?
Yes. They're going to. I don't think there's any doubt. They're going to do it according to their schedule. I think this is not going to be like the April 13th attack was not. It was intended as a show, just to demonstrate to Israel and to the world what Iran can now do. And they were saying, hey, we can fire drones, we can fire cruise missiles, and we can fire ballistic missiles. I am informed that the drones they used were actually very outdated and were not the latest, greatest, but they were, they were using the drones as a way to collect intelligence. So when they're fired and they're flying in, they're able to scoop up a lot of electronic information, what the United States was doing to try to counter those and how the United States and Israel and the other European countries were communicating. The same with the cruise missiles. There's some question that, they didn't use their best there. The ballistic missile was different. They did fire the ballistic missile, and the ballistic missile hit target. So they're proving that they could actually, the ballistic missiles could evade the countermeasures. So this time, I think they'll be far more targeted. I think one other thing that's contributing to the delay is the fact that Russia has troops on the ground in Iran now, manning air defense and electronic warfare systems. This military relationship between Iran and Russia has deepened over the course of the last really 8 years. I think it started really coming together in 2015, 2016. And, it's been sort of a mutually beneficial relationship, because Iran, remember in 2011, Iran took down a CIA drone with apparently electronic warfare means, and they re-engineered the drone, reverse engineered it. So a lot of, at least two varieties of drones the Iranians are making look suspiciously like that CIA drone. And what has Iran done with those? So they've tried to get Russia's bottom, or so they're trading with Russia, and so the Iranian drones, I believe, have played a very important role in Russia's overall offensive, and so there's been that forging of the military relationship. Then you've got the joint naval exercises that have taken place, and first one I believe was in 2019. But as we may have talked before, just because that exercise took place in, say, June of 2019, the planning for that probably started in January of 2018, if not before. At least a year and a half out. So, and that planning meant that Russian, Chinese, and Iranian military officers were routinely meeting and holding discussions about upcoming how to work together and to develop exercises where they would test their ability to communicate with one another. Well, what things are you communicating about? You're not calling up and saying, "Hey, man, did you see the movie Godfather? It was a cool movie. What did you think? Did you hear the latest tunes from, They're not talking what's going on in social media. They're talking about, hey, movement of weapon systems. How does this work? What kind of intelligence information can be shared? A lot of tactical and strategic communication that goes back and forth. So I think in the aftermath of this assassination attempt, the Russians got in touch with the Iranians and said, how can we help? And then also provided some counsel and advice that, you may not, don't go flying off the handle in an emotional rage and hit. Figure out what you're going to do, what your end purpose is. And to that extent, we'll provide you with air defense batteries, S-400 most likely, and with electronic warfare systems that can be used to both counteract incoming missiles fired by Israel if they choose to fire, as well as to disrupt possible attacks. So there's, that's underway. And I don't know if Russia has communicated this directly to Tel Aviv and Washington, or if they're letting some third party communicate it, or they're just hoping that they figure it out. But the Russians, by having their own crews manning those weapons, firing those weapons if needed, the air defense system, if they're attacked and killed by any Israeli missile attack, then all of a sudden Russia would be engaged in a war with Israel. And I think Russia has delivered that message to Tel Aviv. Because the Tel Aviv, I had it on, secondhand information, but the person I heard it from was talking directly to one of the senior Israeli military officials. Okay? Israel was planning to use a nuke, and they're planning to do a preemptive strike. Now, that was as of last week. Where are they now on that? Remains to be seen. Because maybe what the scenario I've outlined, where the Russians get a hold of Netanyahu and say, hey, we got our personnel there now. And any attack on Iran is going to be viewed as an attack on us. So think carefully. Particularly if you use a nuke, we'll use a nuke on you.
Larry, we've learned that. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say that I think that's where we're at. And what's unfortunate is that, let me see if I can find this message, because I don't want people to think that I'm exaggerating about this. It is, it's so crazy what these Zionists believe, that, I mean, they talk their own nonsense, and they don't realize just how crazy it sounds. Come on here, where are you? Oh boy. Well, can't find it right now, but it was, they were saying things such as, Israel's going to strike Iran, and the war will be over in 3 days, and Iran will be begging for mercy. I mean, they really believe that. They say that, and they really believe it. And, that's crazy talk. That's not going to happen. It's absolutely not going to happen that way. And but here's the danger. They truly believe, the people saying this really believe what they're saying. And you try to talk some sense into them. It's just, there's no reasoning with them. They believe their own fantasies.
Larry, Reuters reported that Iran is sending hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia. And
Ballistic missiles?
yeah, they're talking
Nah,
about,
I don't think that's true. I think they're sending drones.
yeah, they're talking about it's a report in Reuters, and they're claiming that. But Larry, at the end of the day, we know that anything happening big in that region, even the United States is talking about just threatening Iran that they will suffer devastating blow if it launches major attack on Israel.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what is the solution on their part? They're not suggesting any sort of solution for what Israel is doing. Just intimidating these countries, which is not a solution for them.
Yeah, no, I think this is gonna end with a fight, and I think it will end with Israel being defeated. And in that defeat, I think some of the ensuing terms to work out a peace agreement will be to probably try to return Israel to its pre-1967 borders. The Israelis won't like that, but if they suffer a devastating defeat, they may not have a choice.
The question is, Larry, if Iran start attacking Israel from all of these groups in that region, from all sides, how the United States is going to manage to defend Israel?
No, they can't. Look how well we've done with defeating the Houthis. How's that worked out? We had a carrier task force off the coast of Yemen, and we had bombers going out and trying to hit Yemeni targets day after day after day. And we're not talking for 1 month. We're, for God's sakes, man, we're talking 9 months. And to what end? The carrier finally left the area because it had to go rest and refit, and wait for another one to show up. But we certainly didn't reopen the Red Sea, and we certainly didn't stop the Houthis. So if we can't handle the Houthis, we're going to handle Hezbollah and Iran? Right. Yeah, I believe that's where people, whatever recreational drugs they're using, they need to stop. It's affecting their judgment.
Because the way that the relationship between Iran and Russia is going right now, it seems that in the near future we're going to have Russian fighters in Iran. Air defense system, Russian fighters, everything. How they going to... It's unbelievable.
They're already there. They're already there. So the one good news about them being there is that it represents a potential break upon further escalation. Because if Russia has correctly communicated with Washington and Tel Aviv, and let them know in no uncertain terms that any escalation, any more direct attacks on Iran will be viewed as an attack on Russia, then that may give the West. But if it's done, this being done quietly behind the scenes, so nobody has to lose face, that may be one of the other things that's at work, explaining why there hasn't been any immediate action one way or the other, either preemptive strike by Israel or immediate retaliation by Iran.
Because we know that after Putin, the most important person in the government is Shoigu. He went to Iran right after these escalations. And
Right.
it shows some sort of, they're sending some sort of message to the United States, to Israelis, but I don't know how they can perceive it.
Yeah, well, just accept it for what it is. The fact of the matter is, Shoigu is Vladimir Putin's personal representative on defense and national security matters. So he's there. It's just as if Putin was there. So this sends a clear signal to the West that Iran has the backing at the highest levels of the Russian government. And then when you add that in with whatever communications have taken back channel or quietly on the red, what they call the red phone, then the United States is not going to come back and say, yeah, the Russians called us up and threatened us, so we've decided not to do anything because we're a bunch of cowards. I mean, that's how it come across. But the reality is Russia's threatened action, and the United States is realizing we're not ready to take that risk.
Yeah. The other thing, Larry, is this case of rape in prisons, prisoners raping the people who
the guards raping the prisoners.
These Palestinians, Gazans in the prison, and they were just legitimizing on Israeli media that it should be a kind of torture for them. And they invited that guy who was raping on video, he was raping, and they invited on their program talking about it. It's unbelievable what's going on. And nobody in the West is talking about what's going on right now in Israel.
Well, nobody in the Western governments are not coming out and officially condemning it. Some have admitted it, yeah, it may be going on. That's their problem to investigate. But I mean, just look at what we're discussing. We're discussing a country which claims to be not just a civilized nation, but a religious nation, a nation that is chosen by God. I mean, the handpicked, that God's favorite people. And here's God's favorite people saying that they can rape, violate anybody that they label as a terrorist, and it's a good thing. This is the definition of evil. They are the exact opposite of what they claim to be. Children of God? I don't think so. Children of Satan? Yeah. Children, but it's unfair to even call them children. These are grown adults. They know better, should know better. And they're behaving in the same way as the German guards did at Auschwitz, and at Sobibor, and at Treblinka, Chełmno, Belzec. Those are the major death camps in Poland. And then, the kind of treatment that was meted out to Jewish prisoners and gypsies and homosexuals at, Dachau, Bergen-Belsen, go down the list of the thousands of camps like that, prisons that were set up in Germany. Israel has lost its soul that it would embrace this. And the fact that, according to that Channel 12 poll that was conducted, 47%, almost 50, almost 1 out of every 2 Israelis think, yeah, we can rape a prisoner, or just like we call him a terrorist. It's okay. We can do anything to them. If you can rape them, if you can sodomize them, then by God, you can kill them too. They do that.
Do you think part of this type of attitude is just making Palestinians or Hamas more aggressive toward the situation in Gaza? That's why, because they're at the end of the day, we know that they're not looking after any sort of political settlement. That's why they're trying to do everything to make it impossible.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's going to make them more aggressive. It's going to make them more determined to fight Israel. Israel's recruiting a whole new generation of, quote, terrorists, as they like to call them. People, the children growing up whose parents were killed, whose brothers and sisters were killed, they'll seek revenge. This is generational. This will go on for a long, long time. And again, that's partly the fault of the West for not stepping in and stopping this. We can stop it tomorrow. The United States could stop it tomorrow. I just telling Netanyahu, oh, dude, you guys are out of control. This is over. All aid's cut off. We're calling back our advisors. We're calling back the ships that we've sent out. You're on your own. Then Israel's going to have to figure out what to do.
Right now, it seems that the Biden administration is supporting two parties, one in Ukraine that is getting to the point that has nothing to do on the battlefield but killing civilians. And on the other hand, in Israel, they're just killing, raping, and doing everything to civilians.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable what they
Yeah,
have achieved.
Hey, the Ukrainian regime their foundation are neo-Nazis. New 21st century Nazis. And it's remarkable what the parallels and the policies between the Nazis there in Ukraine and what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians.
Just to wrap up this session, Larry, do you understand what are Ukrainians doing in Mali and Niger? What's going on there in Africa?
Yeah, apparently they're fighting. They saw it as a way to turn that into a proxy war. So engage with the rebels to overthrow. What's really interesting, so the government of Mali is seen as anti-European now. So this would be a way to try to curry favor with the French, go in and help the French recover what they view as their territory. Doesn't belong to those Africans. Malians said, this is French territory. So that's what I think was going on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
Thank you. Always fun. And hey, you're doing it live now these days. So
Yeah.
it gets out quicker.